Welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast, where we want you to thrive in the ministry God has called you to. We truly believe that God's placement has purpose, and we're here for you with encouragement and tools for the journey.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Olson. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope that you had a great holiday season and that your new year is off to a great start. If you're like me, New Year's can be really exciting and really refreshing, but also really overwhelming. And I guess maybe that's just my personality because I like to be organized. I like to, set goals and have my task list and, you name it. I really like all of those organizational things. But sometimes I overwhelm myself because I think, I have a lot to do and I don't know if 365 days is enough time to do it. And so then I get overwhelmed and frustrated. And so I kind of go back and forth as this mix of excitement and frustration, I guess, or dread. Something that I've been really trying to do and I'm trying to be better about is intentionality. Taking that time to ask the Lord, okay, God, what do you want me to do this year? Because I can have all sorts of ideas. And, something that I've learned about myself this past year is that, I have a lot of ideas about what I should do, like what's the right thing to do? What's the thing I probably should do? And I think that oftentimes I've set my goals mostly a lot of times personally, but also professionally and in ministry. I've set my goals based on what I think I should do or I think should be done. And, sometimes I've gone right ahead and just not even asked the Lord about it and thought, oh yeah, this sounds like a good idea. And I'm really trying hard to be intentional, to sit back and just ask the Lord, okay, God, what do you want me to be doing? What do you want me to focus my time and my energy and efforts on this year? Because that's where I want to be. That's what I want to do. And it's so interesting because, our new year started off not exactly the way that I imagined it. And, we've got 3 kids. And so we certainly don't stay up till midnight. I know that maybe some of you do, but our kids are little and we just don't. We go to bed a decent time and, we want them to get a good night's sleep and, all the things. All the parents of small children, I'm sure you can empathize. But, we had some sweet time over Christmas with family and all of that. And I had these grand ideas of kind of a peaceful, quiet New Year's Eve and a great start off to the new year. We were supposed to have a staycation this first week and everything kind of just was upset and turned upside down. And staycation got kind of canceled because work stuff came up that we had to deal with and couldn't be put off. And all 3 of the kids got sick. And so everything that I thought was going to be wasn't. And obviously, it's all in perspective. It's not that big of a deal. But, as I was walking through the week, I was just like, Lord, I'm kind of disappointed. I haven't had time to sit down and reflect and think and journal and set my goals and all of those things. And I also, everything fun that we had planned had to be canceled, all the things. And I really had to work on my attitude this week about being grateful in that process and not be frustrated with the fact that nothing went as planned. And oftentimes it doesn't. And so I guess I should be used to that by now, but it just was frustrating. And I'm sure that some of you out there can empathize with that. But the interesting thing, coming to the end of this week, and I'm recording this podcast today, in the beginning of January. So this has just happened and is still happening. But what the Lord's really been impressing on my heart is that this is actually what He wanted for me this week. It's what He wanted for our family because I took time, canceled everything, and I was just home with the kids. And we didn't do any of the normal things that we do during a regular week. We just were together and we read books and we chatted and, watched a movie and, rested because they were all sick and they really couldn't do anything else. And I look back on the week and it's like, wow, that was perfect. It was exactly what we needed and exactly what the Lord wanted to walk me through because I think I've oftentimes got it all wrong. the beginning of the year, it is for reflecting. It is for setting goals. It is for, kind of planning, but it has to start in the right place. And I think I needed to quiet my mind, and the Lord knew that. He needed to bring me to a place of rest and a place of peace. Even though it was an exhausting week, I still had downtime, with the kids as I was caring for them. And He needed to bring me to that place to reset my focus and to reset my mind and my heart to be in the right place before I set those goals and ambitions for the year. And I've had so much revelation from that spot, even though, it wasn't exactly what I planned or anything like that. I've had so much revelation from this spot this week, and I'm so grateful for it. And I'm grateful that the Lord, takes our perspectives and takes our situation and sometimes turns it around and sometimes upside down to a place where we see things differently because our perspective shifts and changes. And I'm really grateful for that. And so this morning, this afternoon, I don't know, whenever you're listening to this, today, as you're listening, I wanted to encourage you with what God's doing in my heart and encourage and challenge you to do the same. Maybe you've already set your goals. Maybe you've already gotten quiet before the Lord and, come to that place of rest where you are ready to fall into line with what He wants you to do this year. But for those of you who are in church ministry, I would imagine that might not be the case. You probably got through Christmas and maybe you had New Year's services and events as well. And maybe you're sick like we are this week because you're so tired from all of the holiday festivities that you just kind of crashed. And so my guess is that the busyness of this season is just kind of starting to settle and starting to be behind you. And so you can start to think about what's ahead. But I challenge you and encourage you to not jump ahead of the Lord and to not just get into that do mode. We got to do this stuff. We got to be here. We got to go there. We got to accomplish and achieve. And those are good things. We need to, but we have to start from the right place. And so I just really want to encourage you with that today and really challenge all of us to make sure we start from that spot. Start from a spot of rest. If you've been listening to this podcast faithfully, you heard me talk about the whisper spot, and I've mentioned it a few times. And it's such a powerful thing for my personal life as I have found that spot where I intentionally go and I say, okay, Lord, here I am. I am listening. What do you want to say? And we need to bring our goals and our ambitions and our plans before the Lord in that way as well. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want my plans. I don't want my goals and my ideas. I want them to be aligned with what the Lord wants. There's a song by Sarah Reeves. It's called Just Want You. And I was just in my worship time this morning, I was singing it, and it says, I don't want it if you're not in it. I just want you. And that is exactly what I want the focus of my heart and my mind to be this entire year. That all the plans that I have, they don't mean anything if they're not aligned with the Lord. And in the bridge section of that song, it says, all that I am, be my everything. All of my dreams, I lay them at your feet. All that I am, falling on my knees, I surrender. I surrender. I don't want it if you're not in it. I just want you. If you haven't heard that song, I encourage you to go check it out. I think it's on the Belonging Co. album, and Sarah Reeves. If you just Google that, and we'll stick a Spotify link or something like that in the show notes. But it's such a powerful song, and that was kind of my perspective shift today. Was like, yeah, that's right. That's right. I need to make sure I'm starting from this place of complete surrender. All my dreams, all my thoughts, all my plans, I lay them at your feet. Now, God, what do you want me to do this year? Because all of, my ideas might be an exercise in futility if it's not what you want. And I don't want to be, running around a mountain that I'm not supposed to be, or that He didn't, have intended for me. And so that's just something that He really brought me through this week. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that He uses those circumstances in our lives to speak truth to us and to breathe hope into our souls, because I am a lot more hopeful and excited about the year ahead even now after going through what we did this week. And it's just a tiny thing, but it was the biggest perspective shift for me. And so what does that look like practically? Well, grab a pen and a journal. If you don't have a good journal, I also encourage you. I have a growth book. If you go to growthroots.com, I think is the website. Again, we'll link that in the show notes. But they have the most amazing prayer and growth journal. And I just encourage you to check it out. They actually partnered with us at the Overflow Worship Conference this year. And I think Brianna is going to be, she's the founder. She's going to be on a podcast in the future. So you get to hear from her. But I encourage you to check that out if you're looking for a prayer journal, because they're just the best. I love it. So anyways, get a pen, get a journal, some paper, and just sit down and start writing. Say, Lord, speak to me your plans. And then just start writing. And as you write, align those things with the word and with the things that God has already set in motion in your heart and your life. And maybe you'll find that there are things that you're like, oh, I'm going to not devote as much energy to this year and shift it to here because I feel like that's what the Lord wants me to do. But I just encourage you to sit down and begin with intentionality, write the stuff out, and then just bring it before the Lord and say, okay, God, what do you want me to do with this? Guide me. And He'll align your heart and He'll set your course and your path exactly the way that He wants it to be. And then it's our job to continue to come back to it. We've got to revisit it. That's the one thing about goals that is really hard, is to, not just set it and then kind of forget about it, but to revisit it, every month, or maybe it's a goal you need to revisit every week, whatever that is. But saying, okay, God, where am I at on this? Where do you want me to be? How do you want me to go from here? And He's going to guide your heart and align your thoughts to head in the direction that He wants them to. And so I just encourage you to take that practical step but begin with a surrender of all the busy, all the crazy, all the achieving focus that the culture puts on New Year's. And to start with, okay, God, what do you want? What do you have? Because I don't want it if you're not in it. I just want you. So as I bring this episode to a close, I hope that you're encouraged. I hope that you're challenged with this little mini episode, this tiny little blip of encouragement for you to start out your year right. That no matter what you're facing, whether your week or your month or your year went great, or you are so glad it's over and you never want to go back and revisit it again, let's start with kind of a clean, fresh perspective, putting all of that kind of aside and just saying, okay, Lord, this is for you. This is all for you. What do you have for me right now? And where do you want me to move forward from here? Because God is faithful and He is equipping you. And if you've been at the conference the last few years, we've been talking about this tree, and the progression of our themes each year has kind of built on this tree. So a couple years ago, we talked about new life and how God wants us to have new life. And for those of us in ministry, He wants to breathe new life into our souls and into the ministry and into our churches. And then this last October in 2018, we talked about deep roots and how it is so important to have a healthy, deep roots system in order to, be able to grow and to thrive. And so now that we have those foundations, it's time to begin to take those steps forward. Is what does that look like practically now that I have this foundation and I have these things beneath me? Where do we go from here? And so I encourage you to start with surrender and alignment with the Lord and His word and the things that He has put on your heart, and ask Him, say, God, make your desires my desires. I love that in Psalm 37 where it says, commit your way to the Lord and He will give you the desires of your heart. And that doesn't mean that, we just get whatever we want, but He begins to shift and change and move, and He makes His desires our desires and begins to align our hearts to be with His heart. And that's what I want. And I want that for all of you too. So I hope and pray that you're encouraged, and I hope you'll join us next time for another episode of the Overflow Worship Podcast. But in the meantime, if you need anything, you know where to find us, info@overflowworship.com. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to the Overflow Worship Podcast. To stay up to date, please subscribe for the latest episodes and information. To learn more about the ministry of Overflow, visit overflowworship.com. If you have questions or prayer requests, we would love to hear from you. You can reach us at info@overflowworship.com.